Good morning, everyone. So with panel 5, we are going to discuss again new business models, and in particular on the aspect of technological innovation that introduce new business opportunities, but also are challenging the legacy concept. And around the table with me, I have on my right Aymeric de Vézier, who is the co-founder of Wingly. That's a flight-sharing web-based platform. On my far right, Trish Fritz, who is the director for Global Public Policy at GoPro. Everyone knows GoPro, of course. And on my left, I try to pronounce your name the best possible way, Arvid Müller-Aspergren, who is a fatigue risk management expert at Jeppesen, and who will present to us the tools and systems that they offer to airlines to support crew rostering management. So we'll start with the first presentation by Wingly. I think that you are all aware of those dating websites that exist and that put in relation men and women or people of the same sex. There's one with a very nice name in France that is Adopt un mec, adopt a guy. So there are plenty of websites like that. I'm not using them. Huh? So my wife may be watching. You know. So, so Wingly is doing the same thing, except that you are putting in relation pilot and passengers. And then what's happening in the air, you will tell us.
Ladies and gentlemen, good morning. Thank you very much for the nice introduction, Jean-Marc. So first, I'd like to thank the EASA for organizing this nice event and for inviting us to participate actively in this conference on innovation and a new business model in aviation. So first, I'm going to insert the question, what's Wingly? So you've introduced it pretty well. It's like carpooling, but for light aviation. Basically, we connect private pilots with passengers so they can share a flight and share the cost of the flight. In the past decade, we've seen that the sharing economy wave can do a lot of good and can bring a lot of growth in many sectors. Today, you can easily share your bike, your home, your house, even your boat. Well, what we're trying to do with Wingly is bring aviation into this sharing economy world. Oops. And so bring aviation into the sharing economy world and help light aviation benefit from the growth that the sharing economy can bring. So how does Wingly work? Well, it's a two-sided platform. On one side, you have the pilots. To go on the platform, they just have to register by uploading their license and their medical certificate, and then they can just post the flight they have scheduled to do. They just have to indicate the number of free seats they have and the price that will come out of the cost sharing. For them, it's really just about cost sharing. They cannot make any profit out of it. It's not an Uber type company. They do this for leisure, and they even pay their share of the flight. On the other side, you have the passengers. So the passenger, they can also easily join the platform. They just have to register, and then they can see a list of all the flights that are being offered by the pilots. If they're interested by a flight, they just have to request to join the flight, and the pilot will then accept or refuse the passenger. Once the flight happens, they then share the cost equally with the pilots. On our side, Wingly, we're really just a matchmaker, like you were saying, Jean-Marc. We're just putting them into contact, getting two persons that have a common interest in touch, and this common interest is flying. Our vision is really about democratizing light aviation and making it more affordable for everybody to access it. So less expensive for pilots to fly, but also give an easy way and affordable way to everybody who would like to try flying in a small plane to go on Wingly. So one thing that's really important that's often misunderstood is what's the main use cases of Wingly. Well, it's not something that can be used for travel. It's not a mean of transportation, not a viable mean of transportation. And this is because of the constraint of light aviation. Because of the weather, because of a light-minute maintenance, the plane or the flight can be cancelled. And that's why Wingly is really a leisure-oriented platform. And the two main use cases we have is either round flights, so you land and take off from the same airport, and this is just about seeing the region from the sky. Or you also have A to B flights that most of them are day trips or weekend trips, so you leave in the morning, come back in the evening. It's a real leisure activity and not a way to go from a point A to a point B for business, for example. So I guess many of you are PPL pilots in the room, and you might ask, what is new about what we're doing? Because private pilots have been sharing the cost, the hourly rate of flying for years. It's a common practice in light aviation. Well, what's really new about this is using internet to help the pilots share the cost of their flight, not only with their private circle, their family, their friends, but extend this to the whole Wingly community. And this is doable thanks to internet. So internet has helped us a lot and allowed us to create this platform. And the first important thing about what it allows us to do is reach out to more people. So on one side, help the pilots reach out to more potential passengers with whom they can share the cost. But what's really important also is that thanks to internet, we can reach out to passengers that know nothing about aviation, that would have never been in a small plane, and that thanks to Wingly can experience light aviation, and thanks to Wingly get to know what is light aviation. Thanks to internet, Wingly can also be seen as a great new way of communication. So on the pilot side, it's a great way of communicating safety messages. It's also a good way for pilots to give return on experiment. So it's a good way to improve safety through a new way of communication. But on the passenger, it's also really important that the communication is clear, that Wingly is not commercial aviation. The risks in light aviation are really different than the ones in commercial aviation, and this is made really clear on the platform. And it's made really clear also that it's not a commercial mean of transportation because the flight can be cancelled at any moment. And one aspect that's also really important about Wingly is that today it enables the authorities to keep an eye on cost-share flights. Like I said, this is a practice that's common for private pilots and that has always been happening, but the authorities has no way to see what was going on. What money were the pilots getting, what flights they were doing. Well, with Wingly, we really give them a way to see everything that's going on the cost-share flight, so we're taking away this gray zone that had no visibility. To sum up what internet brought us, we can really say that it's about creating a community of trust and transparency. And a platform like Wingly has many ways of creating this trust and this transparency. As it's cost-share flights, there has to be money going on at one moment. Well, everything is done online. The payment is done online. And this is a guarantee for both pilot and passenger on the platform. It's a guarantee for the pilot because they know that if the flight happens, they will get the money from the cost-share flight. But it's also a real important guarantee for the passenger that they know that if the flight is going to be cancelled or has to be cancelled, they will be fully refunded on the money that they paid at first. And it's also really important for the authorities because they can see on the platform what are the prices that the pilot are putting forward for the cost-share flights. Then the second aspect that's important is the internal chat. We allow the customers on the platform, the users on the platform, to chat with the pilot. So for example, passenger before requesting to join the flight can easily contact the pilot, meaning they can ask what's his experience, ask questions about the flight. But this also works the other way around. Pilot can easily ask the passenger why they want to join the flight, if they've already been in a small aircraft before, and have all the information they need before accepting a new passenger on flight. Then, once the flight happens, this is something that's really common now in the sharing economy world, their ratings. And this happens only if the flight occurred. The pilot can give a rating to the passenger on how the passenger was in the flight, and the other way around, a passenger can rate his pilot. This is a great way for us to be able to see if somebody in the community is not fitting with our mindset, or if they're not adapted for the platform. And then the two last points on this slide is really about the transparency. Our aim is that when you go on the platform, you have all the information you need and nothing is hidden. That's why when you check out the flight information page, you can see everything you need to know about the flight. Where is it going from? What's the flight hours? What will be the cost share price? You have information also about the pilot, his experience, the plane he's planning on using. Everything is made really clear and visible to all the parties, passenger, other pilots, or authorities. And last but not least is the public profile on the platform. So every user has a profile on which you can see a short bio, so a description of who he is, why he's joining the community, and also information that has been checked, such as flight license or medical certificate for the pilot, and of course the ratings that were left before. And now there's one really important question that we wanted to raise, and it's the reason why we started this platform, why we're putting so much effort in getting Wingly up in the air. Well, you can see the problem on this graph. It's the number of flight hours, leisure flight hours, from the French Federation of Aeronautics. Since 1990s, it has decreased by more than 30%. And only in the last 10 years, it has decreased by 15%. That's a lot, and we're trying to tackle this issue. There's many reasons why light aviation hours are decreasing. Maybe regulation has become a bit tougher in the past decade. The price of fuel got really high. Airfields are closing one after the other. And we're not saying that with Wingly we're going to tackle every issue there is for light aviation. But we really think that Wingly is part of what's going to help light aviation grow again. We really believe that we can tackle some of the issue we have. For example, on the pilot side, if I can pass on the next slide. Yeah, so on the pilot side, we said that it's really expensive for them to fly, and that's mainly one of the main issues why pilots fly less. Well, with Wingly, we help them to fly for 2 to 3 times less expensive. And what's really good about this also is that pilots often reinvest the money they saved into flying more, meaning that the pilots become more experienced pilots and therefore safer pilots. For pilots, one of the problems is also finding new people with whom they can share the cost of their flight. They don't necessarily know enough people once they've taken their family, their friends on the flight. Maybe they're not flight enthusiasts and they don't have anybody to share their passion with anymore. Well, with our community, we enable them to connect with up to 10,000 more people, flight enthusiasts with whom they can share their passion. And then there's also 2 really important aspects on the passenger side that we're trying to tackle. Private aviation, if you talk to somebody that's not from the aviation sector, is always or often seen as something reserved to an elite, reserved to super rich people, because they directly have in mind the big private jets that fly for more than 10,000 euros per hour. They have no idea that under those big jets you have light aviation and taxi aviation, and that's what we're trying to break today, break the cliché that light aviation, private aviation is only reserved for an elite, for very rich people, and showing them that it's affordable and accessible for anybody that would like to experience it. And the second thing we're trying to tackle on the passenger side is really the knowledge about light aviation. Today, people don't know the potential of it. People don't know the number of airfields we have everywhere in Europe. They don't know the number of little airplanes that are flying above their head. They don't know that most of the seats are often empty in those small planes. And so we're trying to show everybody the potential of light aviation in Europe. For example, this is the map of Germany, the number of airfields there is in Germany. This is the map, if it comes, of France, and this is the one of UK. These are the main countries with light aviation airfields, and we can see there are some everywhere. And so we really think that Wingly is not the only solution to bringing light aviation back into sustainable growth, but it's going to be part of it. And so far, to give you a couple numbers on Wingly and what we've achieved so far. So we've been live for, No, we really think that, that Wingly can really help light aviation grow again. It can help it because it helps the pilot fly more. It also helps the pilot that don't renew their license to keep flying. And it also brings a lot of new pilots into the aviation sector, people that are going maybe to become PPL pilots afterwards. But it's not only the pilot we're helping, it's also the whole industry, because pilots flying more means plane flying more, so it needs more maintenance. And also plane being used at their full potential mean that a plane can be renewed more often. So it really has also an impact on all the industry and the manufacturers. And now, so to finish the presentation, I just wanted to give you a few metrics on our platform Wingly and what we've achieved so far in the past 12 months. So we have 22,000 users registered on the platform amongst the 3 countries where we are live, France, Germany, and the UK. And this means that when you go on the platform, you have around 300 flights that are offered per pilots. The dots are local flights, and the blue lines are day trips or weekend trips. And so far, we've helped more than 1,500 passengers discover light aviation, be it in a round flight or in an A to B flight. I'm sure there'll be plenty of questions, and I'll be happy to answer the ones that might have arisen during the presentation.
Thank you very much, Emmerich. This is a new business. This is a new business. But so I will not, at this stage, bombard you with questions because I think the audience will do it in a moment. But only 2 or 3 questions on the business itself. First question is, are you making any money at this stage? Second question, how do you see the business development in the coming years in terms of volume of business? And third question, today there are, I think, 4 or 5 platforms like you on the market in Europe. Do you think it is viable, or is there a place only in the future for 1, 2, or 3 such platforms?
Okay, thank you for the question. I'll start by the first one. So about, are we making any money? I guess you all know that aviation is not the easiest place to make money, and airlines or flying is not even one of the hardest in aviation. So no, we're not making any money yet, but of course, as a matchmaker, we have a business model that I haven't shown yet. Because we are still testing it. Today it's based on the commission model, so meaning that when there's a transaction between the passenger and the pilot after a flight happens, we take a commission on this transaction. Today it's being tested. Maybe it's not the right business model for the platform. Maybe it's not the one that will make it viable. This is something we still have to test. It's still a young company, not more than 18 months company, so lots of stuff to test. But we believe that it might in the future be a viable business model. And maybe I'll switch directly to the third question and come back to the second afterward about competition. It's true that the light aviation sector is a small market. And for sure there's not enough place on the European market for 4 competitors. Maybe at most 2 competitors can be on this market. But I really think that also this is kind of a first project. Light aviation has never been digitalized or never used internet at its full power to sustain a good growth in the sector. And I'm sure there's many projects that could also arise after Wingly for light aviation. Some that are already live in the US, for example, the way of sharing flights when you're current on a plane in one air club, the fact that you could use the plane from another air club where you're not member, but as you're current on the plane, you should be able to use it. There's many other things that are possible to do in light aviation, and we really look forward with Wingly to build other projects behind for light aviation and make it grow again. And so in terms of development in the next 5 years, our plan is really to focus on flight sharing in the next years, make it work. And once this first project will work, like I said, we really are looking forward to building new projects. And we also really think that light aviation and a flight sharing platform like we're doing it today is also a great way to improve the number of people using taxi aviation. Because today, what's really hard for taxi aviation is that there's not enough people using it. So when you take a flight from a city to another, you're going to pay both ways, even if you're not in the plane both ways. Well, if you have more people using it, a really big community that could use taxi aviation, well, you could decrease the price considerably. And so this is also maybe something to study for the future or work with taxi aviation companies in the future.
Thank you very much, Emmerich, and so we will take the questions later after the 3 presentations. Now I'm turning to Arvid, so it's not the small business anymore. We are going to deal with airline business, and in particular with crew rostering. That is a crucial activity in airlines because it touches on financial efficiency. In terms of crew rostering optimization, but also on crew fatigue, which has a key impact on safety. And you're going to tell us how Jeppesen offers services to airlines in order to optimize those 2 aspects of crew rostering.
Thank you. Yes, so during this presentation, I will talk about the combination of biomathematical fatigue models and optimization and the wonders that can work for the crew planning process. I will also, there's an animation there. As the title of the presentation implies, I will talk a bit about alternative means of compliance and how the use of biomathematical models can facilitate a greater use of this. So Jeppesen is a subsidiary of Boeing, part of Boeing Digital Aviation. I'm working with Jeppesen Crew and Fleet, which is, has its main office in Gothenburg, Sweden. We do products for the full crew management process, starting from manpower planning, moving on to pairing and rostering, crew tracking, day of operation. We offer solutions for preferential bidding, trip trading, and other crew-facing activities in crew planning. We also do fleet planning in the form of tail assignment and fleet tracking. And, of course, we do fatigue risk management. And a common theme for all of these offerings is optimization, which is really what Jeppesen Crew and Fleet is about. I think we can field a couple of football teams of PhDs in mathematics, all working on solving difficult optimization problems for aviation sector. And, well, we're not really a new player. We've been around for quite some time. As you see, we have a fair number of customers in the aviation industry, and we estimate that our crew solutions are used by approximately 350,000 crew every day. So, first topic is to introduce biomathematical models, or BMMs. And the concept of a biomathematical model is that you simulate the biological response of some kind of stimulus. In this case, we're looking at how human fatigue appears out of a pattern of sleep and wakefulness. And the main components of this is time awake and time of day. And time of day usually called circadian rhythm. And then there are additional factors like sleep depth, if you have been sleep deprived for a period of time before, and also what we call task load and other factors, such as what are you doing while you're awake. And it's important to understand that these models are statistical models in a way. I mean, we simulate a biological process, but the models, they are valid and they are very accurate on a population level. So if we're talking about we're going to make schedules for 1,000 pilots for 1 month, then we know that the predictions of these models, they are very good. But then when you zoom down and you look at one particular individual at one point in time, then a biomathematical model, I mean, it can give you some insights, but it's not really valid anymore at this level. Next topic to introduce, since well, I've understood that most of you here don't have a background in crew planning. So just give you a quick introduction to the concept of crew rostering. So creating rosters for an airline crew in a commercial aviation setting is not a trivial matter. And typically it's something that you do in several phases. Well, first of all, of course, you have the manpower planning phase where you see, okay, so 2 years from now, we're going to have 25 Airbus 380s. How many captains do we need? How many first officers? How many cabin crew? And then you move on to looking at, okay, so what timetable are we going to fly? And this first phase is a critical phase in where you create anonymous rotations called trips or pairings. And a pairing is, well, it's a sequence of flights that is very efficient, but anonymous. And then only in the next step do you do the rostering, which is assigning sequences of flights to actual people. And the reason for this is mathematical complexity, computational effort. Because in general, I mean, it's easy for someone who doesn't have a background in computer science and optimization to think that, okay, so we have a few thousand pilots, we have a few thousand flights, let's just throw them to the computer and let it try everything and figure out what is the best. But that is not really viable. Even for a small airline, we're looking at something like maybe 30 or 40 aircrafts. The amount of computational effort it takes to try out every combination in order to create a roster is, well, it's not enough to spin up another instance on the cloud. If you would cover the surface of the Earth with the fastest computer available today, then this computer would still be working out the next month's roster when the universe is dying from heat death. This is not a problem you solve by just throwing more computer power at it. You need to be clever. So for this reason, we have this phased approach. We create anonymous rotations, then you do the rostering. And there's a lot of intricate mathematics going on in the background. But anyway, so we have a roster here on picture. And it's pretty much, it's sequences of flights combined with certain ground duties, time off, other things. And when we combine this with a biomathematical model, we can figure out the expected level of fatigue at different points in time. Since given that we know when people are working, and some additional information such as transfer times, commute times, and rest facilities on board, we can deduce when are people likely to sleep. And we can do this to a pretty high standard, since we're basing our work off something called the free process model, which is, I guess, the most accepted model of fatigue in the sleep science field. But we also tuned this using crowdsourcing together with partner airlines. So we've gathered actual fatigue assessments from several 100,000 flights, complete with sleep diaries, and the complete rosters worked. So based on having these chains that you see on the picture, we can make good assessments on how likely are crew to be fatigued. Now, the next step, of course, when you know how fatigued people are, it's doing something about it. And in the olden days, and still today in smaller airlines, you build these rotations manually. But in the larger airlines, and today, what you do is, as I mentioned, you use optimization. And basically, the concept of optimization is you take your available crew, the flights that they're going to fly, you put it into this box that contains the rules governing how are you allowed to schedule people. So, and this is, FTLs from the likes of EASA and FAA, labor agreements, internal quality rules, and then you have incentives or penalties. So these different knobs that you can turn. You can tell the optimizer, try harder to pack things efficiently for a higher productivity, typically counting in block time per duty. You can tell it to emphasize more, minimize the real costs, as in minimize hotel nights, transfer costs, duty days, optimize for robustness, as in make sure to protect the connections between flights, avoid aircraft changes. And the really cool thing here is when you integrate a biomathematical model with optimization, we can also tell the optimizer, optimize for alertness. When considering all these, I don't even know the names of these numbers, but we're talking about 2 to the power of 200 or so, different possible combinations. Figure out which combinations are most conducive to letting people sleep when they are able to sleep and letting people work when they are at their peak. And of course, normally the way our customers use this is to use the biomathematical model to make the best possible solution given all the rules that they have. But a very interesting thing you can do, and possibly very lucrative as well, is disregarding all the rules, throwing compliance to the wind. So turn off all the rules, disregard the FDLs, disregard your labor agreements, and only use productivity and fatigue, or avoidance of fatigue, as your incentives in optimization. And then this lets you identify bottlenecks. So I guess it's a bit difficult to read here, but what we find is that disabling the FDLs allows us to reduce fatigue by a lot. Basically, breaking the rules makes things much, much better. And in this case, of course, if you disregard all the rules, it's not realistic for a multitude of reasons, but together with the scenario capabilities of optimization. So pretty much, since we're not doing the work manually, I mean, we're just telling the computer to, all right, make me a crew solution for next month where we emphasize fatigue or emphasize productivity. And you let the computer clusters work for, well, a few minutes or a few hours, depending on the size of your operation. We can create all these different scenarios where we try, okay, so we disable all the rules. What is the best possible solution? And then, comparing scenarios, we can figure out which rules are the big bottlenecks. And it could be an FTL limitation, how much you're allowed to work during a particular day. It could be a labor agreement, and it could certainly be your timetable. If you have certain flights that are very difficult to plan in an efficient way due to bad timetable design. So using this approach of optimizers and fatigue models, we can find candidates for breaking the rules. And given that you as an airline have an approved fatigue risk management in place, you get lots of ideas from this process on where should we look for exemptions. And now, of course, as I mentioned, a fatigue model is a statistical tool. All the input we have is the schedule. So it's not a complete answer. It's not enough in order to get an exemption from an FTL, for example. But it's a very good starting point for building a business case. Because when we identified the particular rules or particular instances of using a rule where it's causing a problem, then we know, okay, so here we can make a lot of money. So let me give you an example of why rules sometimes cause fatigue rather than preventing it. So what we have in front of us here now is actually it's two screenshots from our app, Crew Alert. And it's an iPhone, iPad app that contains the full Boeing alertness model, our implementation of a biomathematical model, where you can input schedules and get fatigue predictions. So in both cases, we model the same flight. It's a flight from Sweden to Thailand. It's going overnight on 2 pilots. And in the case to the right, the red one, we are following the rules as they were in Sweden at this time, where before a tough night duty like this, you need 12 hours of unbroken rest before the flight. And that sounds good, okay? More rest is better. But in order to have 12 hours of rest before an evening flight, and this happens to be a flight that doesn't go from your home base, you need to position in to the airport where you're having your rest very early in the morning. In this case, you need to take a positioning flight at 6 in the morning. And given that you have perhaps a commute time of 2 hours, and you need to get up, you need to get dressed, etc., this means, okay, so now you have to get up at 3 in the morning. You're ruining a full night's sleep before a night duty. Whereas if we were breaking the rules, reducing your rest time before a tough duty, we can let you sleep in the morning. You can take a positioning flight at 9 o'clock instead. And in both cases, you can have an afternoon nap in the hotel. You have the rest facilities available for you. Only difference is when we break the rules, you get a full night's sleep. When we follow the rules, you don't get that night's sleep. So it's an example of why rules are a very primitive way of designing solutions for preventing fatigue. So also about this app is this is also our platform for crowdsourcing fatigue data. So in addition to the modeling capabilities, you can also do fatigue reporting here. You can push out the rosters to crew, and then they can do fatigue assessments, both subjective on the KSS scale or Zamperelli, but also objective tests, PVT tests, testing reaction time and focus. So we use this for collecting data when we calibrate our model on real aviation conditions. So to round off, I'm going to look a bit in my crystal ball. And I think that there will be an increased interest in derogations from the FDLs in the future. One of our customers has already had a successful application, Vidra in Norway. They're now allowed to fly 70 hours per week instead of 60. And they built a very good case around this, showing how with their operation and how they fly, this provides an equivalent level of safety or even a better level of safety than following the basic rules. And I think that there will be more and more airlines interested in derogations because there are more and more airlines acquiring advanced optimization technology and acquiring fatigue models integrated with optimization. So this way of finding the candidates becomes more and more available. And also, since you can use this at a very early phase, already when you look at your timetable for the next year, you can run the optimizers and create scenarios saying, all right, so if we lay out our timetable like this and we fly like that, breaking this rule, then, well, that could be interesting. So I think we will see more communication from the airlines saying that, hey, maybe if we could fly like this next year, we will do that. And you will come to the regulators and ask for alternative means of compliances being accepted. So I think this can be quite a challenge because, of course, as the airlines, are they ready for this? I mean, some airlines are very far ahead in using these technologies. Other airlines might be left behind, missing out on business. There's always the question of the relation between the airlines and the unions. Are the unions ready to have constructive dialogue about breaking rules in order to improve safety? And then, of course, for the regulators, are they ready for handling a flood of derogation requests? Do they have the bandwidth for that? Do they have the skills and competence to judge the business cases? So I think that we'll have quite interesting time ahead of us. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Arvid. So if I summarize your key message to the audience is, be safe, break the rules. But I think more seriously, I think your examples, I think, shows clearly the limitation, and we've discussed that before, of prescriptive regulations, especially in very complex subjects like flight time limitations. Flight time limitations are extremely prescriptive and complex regulations. How can a complex and prescriptive regulation cater for all possible cases that an airline will meet when rostering their crew? That's the question behind that, obviously. So, performance-based approach is probably a better way in this case to optimize the both sides of the issue, efficiency and safety. Now I'm turning to Trish, so now, in terms of breaking the rules, we are going to discuss a domain where the rules are being built, and you will tell us about your ongoing development at GoPro and what you see on the existing, the ongoing development on rules for drones. Trish, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, and thank you, EASA, for having us here today to speak to you. I first want to point out that I'm not supporting breaking the rules, but let's definitely talk about some of the concerns that we have. That could be the case. And so to begin with, can I get a raise of hands who actually knows who GoPro is? So a fair amount of you. And who in this room has flown a drone? Okay, this is good to know. Okay, so we want to get, oh, where's my clicker? I want to give you a little bit of background about GoPro so you guys know who we are as a company and kind of the direction that we're going, and then we'll talk about some of the regulatory concerns that we have. So GoPro, these are the locations that we are throughout the world. We are very dynamic, very international, so we're definitely not a small startup company anymore. We IPO'd in 2014, and it's quite a big and growing company at this point in time. This is a little bit of our community base, and you can see that our largest community base is here in Europe. That's pretty exciting, and it's also our larger community bases in our younger demographics that are using technology. And most importantly in that technology, in this next slide, you'll see the amount of online social media that GoPro is generating. And this is through our partnership with Red Bull, as well as sponsored athletes that we have around the world, as well as just people out there capturing really cool images of themselves, their families, and their friends doing things that they just want to brag about. And that's really the dynamic of GoPro. And while doing that, Nick Woodman, our CEO, always wanted to be able to capture himself doing it outside of the vision that he's seeing it. So you see GoPro with a multitude of mounts where you can put the camera so you can get a different vision from the top of your surfboard to your head to the bike rack. And then the natural evolution for GoPro happened to be going to a drone. So that answers our question, why is GoPro an action camera company on EASA's stage today? Because with an aviation background, I would have never expected to see GoPro in this type of position 5 years ago. So we are happy to announce Karma, our drone, hit the US shelves on Monday of this week. We'll be in Europe later this year, and so we're very excited about this. But beyond the excitement, we think it's really fundamental that we teach and promote the responsibilities that it is required to go up into the airspace. We need to make sure that we still maintain that same level of safety that we see throughout the national airspace system, whether it's in Europe, whether it's in the United States, Canada, Australia. We see regulations everywhere. All of them differ a little bit, which is problematic for the drone industry. But as we're getting more mature in dealing with authorities as well as communicating to our users, we're actually seeing some progress in being able to promote safety. Okay, so I want to take a moment before I dive into some of our regulatory concerns to give you guys my background. 5 years ago, I was an advisor to the FAA Administrator, Michael Huerta, and there wasn't a drone topic on our priorities list. We were not talking about drones 5 years ago. And then 2 years later, I joined as the senior advisor to the deputy administrator of the FAA, and his roles and responsibilities were really focused around technology. So he handled next-gen advancements, our partnership with CESAR here in Europe. And ultimately, what fell into that group is integration of drones into the national airspace system. So he started on the job in June of 2013. I can honestly tell you, we were still calling drones at that point UASs. We were fighting the good fight for that. And then by the time I left the agency in March this year, I promise you, there wasn't an hour that went by that we didn't hear the word drone. There was a sighting, there was a meeting on drones, there was a stakeholder concern, or we had a new application we have a 333 exemption at the time where you could apply for a certain authorities to be able to fly your drone outside of certain regulatory requirements. And it has not stopped. And I know that EASA, and I feel for you guys because you are exactly in the position I was sitting a year ago. And it's very difficult. We are used to having data to drive our decision making. And it's hard to kind of pull a number out of the sky and say, this is going to ensure safety when we don't have data on drones. And so that's where I start with the regulatory concerns that we have. I'm just going to highlight a few. I mean, we can go on forever about the things that the drone manufacturers would like, but to promote safety, there are some barriers and obstacles that the regulatory authorities are creating for the manufacturers. And I want to first talk about something that I do believe there is support here in Europe for this. It just seems to be taking some time to get started, and that's registration. As manufacturers, we put information in our software, in our boxes. We can promote what we think is the best way to operate our drone and provide the best rules and regulations that are currently available to them. But I don't know how many of you guys, when you get your new iPhone or your new Samsung, actually read that safety pamphlet. I can honestly tell you I do not. And we worry about that. And the one thing that I could tell you from the registration system in the United States is most people looked at it as it was being developed and promoted as an enforcement feature. Like, this is the FAA getting in the way. They're going to slow and stifle this innovative, new emerging market. But really, the way that the FAA was looking at it was, this is our first touch. This is the first opportunity we have to provide information about where you can fly, how you can fly, who you can contact if you have a question about safe flight, out to the user, and as well as documenting who those users are and being able to push information. Because before, they were just kind of, if you have a drone operator today in Europe, we don't know who they are unless a manufacturer actually has information about them. We don't know how to push new information to them. So this was the very first time that I felt that people really had an understanding that there are consequences. Flying a drone is real, and it can be dangerous if you don't follow the rules. So I want to promote and hope that others will think of the registration process as not intrusive, not burdensome, but rather a key safety feature of this market moving forward. The second thing is, I mentioned earlier, is what the manufacturers can do to couple onto that education piece. And this is where I think we're in a really unique spot with Europe and EASA's development of their prototype rules. Is the Know Before You Fly campaign came out with some set rules and regulation, set guidance. Let me make that clear. It was set guidance that they felt was going to be pretty close to what the regulatory bodies were thinking about doing, but got ahead of FAA because they did not want that gap of time between the Part 107 being announced and saying, these are the rules of flight for drones, to be an accident. The industry rallied, and they did a public-private partnership and came to a guideline consensus on Know Before You Fly can be disseminated. It doesn't have an enforcement mechanism behind it, but it is absolutely an educational tool that you can use with your operators. So I think that it would be wonderful if Drone Manufacturers Alliance of Europe, we have other partners in the room here. I know there are other key stakeholders, the Airline Pilots Association, helicopter guys. We should get together in a room and figure out what the Know Before You Fly in Europe looks like before we have something that we could have prevented. Because as much as EASA, I know, is going as fast as they can, they have political hurdles and barriers, and they still need, the commission's vote in November. And so there's all these things that potentially will happen and happen right on time, but best case scenario, we're looking at March or later. So I don't think that we should be passive and wait, but rather get together and figure out if we can have a consensus guidelines to help our operators be able to do it properly and safely, knowing this could change in the future based on the final rules. But I think it would be far better than just sitting and waiting. So that's my plug for some partnership on the private side. And the third one I want to talk about, maybe, are performance limitations. So we see this in the prototype rules. We have a few down there, altitude restrictions, geofencing, e-identification, and what's their bottom one? Age limitation, there we go. All are things that we certainly want to talk about. I think our technology advancements are coming along. I don't think e-identification is ready today. I'm not sure it'll be ready next year, but let's definitely talk about it, figure out what that infrastructure is going to look like, who's going to support it, whether it's going to be EASA or member states, and how do we all plug and play so it's an easy operating tool that doesn't disadvantage any single drone manufacturer. Geofencing, we are looking for, true guidance from EASA. Like, where is there an authenticated data source that we can follow and make sure that we're all doing it right from every drone manufacturer, because our softwares can be different, but if there was one source of data that said we shouldn't fly here, or this is truly the zone around the airport because the ping could be the middle of the runway or the middle of two converging runways, or so when you think about the regulatory requirements around what does a 5-mile radius look like, it can differ depending on who interprets that. So we should be looking at some standard processes. So in this particular instance, I want to really kind of pick on the altitude restriction, because it is the one that we're seeing the most divergent on across the member states, and as well as a little bit across the world. There are a few that are clear leaders. And so here's a lot of the member states, and there's a few other countries listed as well. And then at the very end, you see this very small blip right there that happens to be EASA's prototype rule proposal. So to me, we need to work together and figure out what that line looks like. There has to be some medium between Portugal and EASA's prototype rule that could work as a common factor across all of the EU. And that's really what we think as drone manufacturers would help promote safety across the board. Because if you're flying in Brussels and then all of a sudden you end up at an EASA meeting in Cologne and it's a whole different regulatory scheme, you are actually introducing risk into the system versus having one common goal and standard out there for every drone operator to abide by. So I want to pause right here and really send out my best wishes to EASA, because I've been in your shoes and I know it's a struggle. It's day in and day out you are told to go faster, and day in and day out you are told by different stakeholders you want something different, and you're being pulled all sorts of directions. So again, I think that people in this room all across our interests, we are here to help. We want to provide our input. We're looking forward to having some high-level meetings, and safety is our goal. As manufacturers, our business, we have to have 100% safety. We can't have any mishaps, and we want to make sure that we can educate everybody on a common platform. So not only GoPro's drones, but every other manufacturer's drones as well have users that have the same ability and have the same education, so we can promote safety across the board. So with that, I think we're partners. Manufacturers have to do their job. The authority has to do theirs to promote safety. And I just want to leave you guys with a clip that we provide to our users of our drone on its key safety features. There's nothing unique about Karma versus other comparable 2-kilogram type drones out there, but I think it's just good for you guys to hear if you've never flown a drone. These are common features today, and that every drone basically in this market has. So I'll end with a video.
We've applied some amazing technology and engineering to be sure the Karma drone and controller perform safely. In this video, we'll tell you about a few of the many features designed to keep you, your Karma, and your surroundings safe. One of the things the controller does is monitor the battery levels, so you don't have to. If you're busy flying and having fun and one of these batteries becomes low, don't worry. The controller lets you know with a voice alert and an on-screen message. Karma also automatically returns to the launch location and lands before the battery is completely drained. Although we don't advise it, you can cancel this automatic flight home and continue flying. Just know that if the battery reaches a critically low level, Karma automatically lands in place, even if you're over water. And you can't cancel that. So it's best to pay attention to the low battery warning when you first get it, and let Karma fly back to you when it thinks it needs to. Karma and the controller are constantly communicating during flight. But if the two components happen to lose connection, no need to panic. Karma hovers in place while the controller tries to reestablish a connection. If a connection can't be reestablished within 10 seconds, Karma automatically returns to the launch location and lands. Regulatory agencies set limits on how high you can fly. For example, the maximum altitude in the US is 400 feet. To help you stay compliant, the controller lets you enter limits for altitude and distance based on where you're flying. If Karma gets close to these limits, you'll get sound and on-screen alerts so you can make the right adjustments to stay safe. The controller provides voice and on-screen alerts for many other situations, such as no-fly zones, loss of GPS signal, connection strength, battery level. We'll keep you up to speed on all of these and more. So get out and capture that amazing perspective from the sky. We've got you covered.
Okay, thank you very much, Trish. I think that there's at least one important element to remind from your presentation is that rules are important, but education is really fundamental for safety, and in particular when we touch large audiences, like it is the case now with drones. On drones, you may know that we have in the room our, I will not say guru, but our at least our specialist on drone regulations, and he's been involved in the prototype regulations on drones. And maybe what I can ask you, Stefan, is maybe to join the panel, join the club, and if at some stage when there are questions, or if you wish to comment on some elements of Trish's presentation, you can do that in a moment. But I would like to first start with the questions on Wingly, because I think there are quite a few. All right, so are you prepared? But I think maybe I will have to take the first one, the first question. So on web-based platform, the FIA has said no. DGAC has said no. Many NAA has said no. Only EASA don't see the safety and social issues. So that's an interesting point of view. The FAA has said no. It is true, but they are not in the room. They can't comment. DGAC has said no. It is not exactly the case. Let me tell you the whole story behind this activity. Flight sharing, cost sharing on general aviation has been made legal under the general aviation rules 3 years ago. So in fact there is an exemption from the commercial air transport regulations for cost sharing flights in general aviation with 6 people maximum, and there are a few conditions. So that's the legal aspect of the question, and it is in fact it is a political decision, and the political decision is okay for flight sharing. We can accept a level of safety which is not the level of safety of commercial air transport, but the level of safety of general aviation. So that's the starting point. Now it is true that when the regulation was adopted 3 years ago, flight sharing was envisaged in the context of aero clubs, or why not people meeting in a bar. Oh, I'm going to fly tomorrow to that place. Would like to come with me, and we share the cost. And this is legal. Is it safer to meet people in a bar than to meet people through a web-based platform? That's another question. So this is where we are now, and recently DGAC, so they have not said no to this activity, but they have introduced additional conditions to be met to use those web-based platform, in particular on the experience of the pilot, for instance, 200 flight hours minimum. But obviously, and that's part of the question, the issue goes beyond safety. There are many related issues to flight sharing, social issues, fair competition issues. How far does this activity compete with some air taxi operations, and can we guarantee fair competition with this? So those questions and those issues and the social issues, the fair competition issues, they are not within the remit of EASA, which means that the response that we can give to this issue is only a partial response. We can respond on the safety aspect of the issue, and maybe we can say, okay, for us that's safe, that's okay, but maybe the European Commission, in its wisdom, will say, oh, it doesn't fit with our fair competition policy, and it has to be stopped. And I understand that the Commission is also working on those aspects. So with us, we discuss only the safety, the safety aspect of this activity, and how do we pose the safety problem for this activity? We have to pose the safety problem in those terms. Knowing that 3 years ago the decision was made that the general aviation safety level was acceptable for flight sharing, what are the additional risks that the use of web-based platforms may bring? Is it less safe to contact passengers through internet than through traditional means, the aero club or the bar, as I mentioned before. And this is how we have to raise the question. And it is not a simple question. Why? Because, as you mentioned on the drones operations, we have no data. So we have no data. And so we have to deal with the issue, having a little element on that. What we've done recently, we have set up a working group with all the players involved, the web-based platforms, agency experts, experts from the member states, representative of the general aviation sector, and we have started to make a risk analysis to see if there is any specific risk that should be mitigated. So that's the scope of the agency activity. That's only on safety. And let me tell you that it's not very intuitive. If I take, for instance, one example, so the French DGAC has adopted in August a series of special conditions for the use of web-based platform, and one of these conditions is the pilot should have at least 200 flight hours of experience. And it seems okay. It's safer to have more experienced pilots. But if you look at a certain report, and I have in mind a study conducted by CA UK, this study concludes that the most dangerous general aviation pilot is the male pilot. Yes, male pilot with a flying experience between 200 hours and 500 hours. Why? Because in fact, the less experienced pilot will be extremely careful. He will not take any risks because he has limited confidence. And when the confidence grows, when complacency comes into the picture, this is where the pilots start taking the more risk, and this is where you have the peak of accident. So things are not counterintuitive. So we've not said no to this activity from a safety point of view, but we are reviewing it, knowing that it's a plus-minus exercise. So there might be some additional risks, but there might be also some long-term or medium-term benefits to this activity, and so it's a complex exercise that we are conducting, and there's no reason for us to stop immediately this activity, because there is no reason for us to believe that there is an immediate threat to safety, but we are working on it. And I think that in the meantime, there's a key element to that is information to the public. I think that it's of paramount importance that people from the general public understand that the safety risks in flying a general aviation aircraft is 1,000 times higher than in commercial air transport, and that's obviously a key information to be passed on to the public. And maybe I pass the floor to Emeric if you would like to comment on those issues.
Yeah, thank you very much. Well, your answer was pretty complete. Just to add one thing about, you said that many NAAs have said no to flight sharing, except France and the Netherlands and the FAA. We don't know publicly any other NAA who have been against flight sharing. And maybe you forget to mention all the ones that have validated that flight sharing platform like Wingly is legal and or who are supporting us, such as the UK CAA, because in terms of safety, there's also a big added value to what Wingly has to offer, because pilots flying more means pilots being more experienced. Today, what's dangerous is a pilot that's not flying for 4 months, 5 months, and then he's going to go back in his plane, and he's not current anymore, and that's the dangerous situation. Today, we allow the pilots to fly way more because money is not a limit anymore. They're not being restrained by the fact that they don't have enough money to fly at least as much as they would like to. And this is a really important thing that is not often mentioned, is that if you enable the pilots to fly for less expensive, they fly more and they become more experienced and better pilots. So it goes in the sense of safety. And the CAA of UK is not the only country that has clearly validated it, and all the countries that we are live in, including Germany, has validated it. We also had a validation from Switzerland, from the Hellenic CAA, and we tried to contact all the CAAs before launching a country. We haven't had answers from all CAAs for the moment, but more positive answers than negative ones.
Thank you, Emeric. I will take then later on also questions from the audience on flight sharing. First on the drones. Stefan, would you like to comment, particularly on one challenging aspect of Trish presentations, the maximum altitude, which doesn't seems to be very favorable to us.
Yeah, I see also a question here in the system on this uniform altitude that we mandate, and I want to explain the flexibility we have in the system. Now, what we propose in the prototype regulations is a system of different mitigations to the risk we clearly see. And these are operational limitations like altitudes, like distance from people, like limited access to certain areas that can be defined by the member states, no drone zones, limitation zones, but also technological limitations, certain equipment, geofencing that's required for certain drones, limitations on the risk to third parties on the ground, where we currently propose to use the AIS, the injury scale that's coming from the automotive industry, to ensure that the risks are under control, but also have the pilot competence in the widest interpretation as one of the main elements. And it starts from kids that operate toys to people that use consumer drones, where it's only the leaflet in the box and new information tools that we have to provide, or that somebody has to provide, like the apps we have seen before you fly. We do not expect the operators of a drone that he gets from the fuel station or Amazon, that they know what is a notice to airman, what is an ICAO map, what are the traditional means of providing information to pilots. So we need new means. We need probably a layer in Google Maps that tells if you can operate somewhere or not. So we need new ways to communicate to these people, appropriate to the level of competence they have, and for the more complex classes of drones in the open category require a more robust competence, being able to show evidence of a training to the enforcement people. The altitude limitation is one element, and this is applicable to simple drones operated by quite unexperienced, untrained people that more or less have not this training, or not no evidence of training. If you go beyond, if you operate in the next subcategory in the open class, we allow up to 500 feet. So there we are. If you would show at the graph, we would be more on the top than on the lower end. So we have flexibility. If there's more pilot competence, that you really can rely on the pilot, like today for model aircraft, that they are able to keep the drone in visual line of sight, to separate from other airspace users, we give them the freedom to operate up to that altitude. Beyond that, we talk in the prototype rule only on the open category, where there's no authorization required before you can start the operation, except that this area is permitted to do this kind of operation. We have other means. We have the specific category, where even we can, where we propose to have standard scenarios that might be very helpful to provide flexibility on the national level, or to allow operation in a different way. And in the open category, we talk about visual line of sight, a very local operation, and no authorization. In the specific, it could be beyond visual line of sight, but there will be a lot of work to be done, technology to be developed, and standards to be developed. I think these 50 meter, that's not so simple. That's first basic threshold to first reduce the probability of encounters of other airspace users, because it's clearly the lower you are, the less traffic is there. The other is to reduce the impact energy when something is falling from the sky. But when there's a higher competence, when there's a more robust technology available, we definitely allow operation in high altitudes.
Thank you very much, Stefan, for the clarification. Trish, you would like to react to that, or does the answer satisfies you?
So specifically, we are looking at the open class, A2 and 3. We believe those two boxes should be up to the 150 meters as well. I do see that the mitigating factors on the right certainly contribute to why you think the A3 should be able to fly in those higher zones because of the competency not only of the pilot but the limitation factors that are built into the drone. So I think that we need to probably clarify a few of those things versus the technologies available versus the competency of the operator.
That's definitely, we have received on these prototype rules a lot of comments. We had a workshop last Monday in Cologne with 200 people, and we had a lot of comments requiring a more robust pilot competency, but questioning also in some cases the role that technology plays in that context. If we can rely on geofencing, if this is supportive to the pilot, if it's supportive to the operator, or if this is the main mitigation where we rely on that this technology will make it improbable that the drone enters a certain airspace. So if it's more an information system or if it's more really a hard geofencing, and we will review the comments, we will develop the next level, provide an NPA March of next year, and then we enter in the next discussion and the next consultations.
Yes, this is not indeed the end of the road on the rules development, and I think that the good thing is that I would say as usual, because it is in our DNA in the agency, we involve the stakeholders and we listen to them, and just last question to Stefan: when will be the end of the road? I mean, when will the regulations? When do you foresee the publication date of the final rules on drones?
The target for us is to definitely be in line with the changes to the basic regulation. When the scope of the European regulations would be amended, we need to be ready, and that's foreseen in the second half of the year. So we try to be very fast, but it's a complex issue. It's a lot of work for us.
Thank you very much, Stefan. What I would like to propose to do now is to take questions from the audience. In particular, any questions for Arvid? So there are a few questions there. So first question, yes.
I would have a question to Wingley, or a comment to the Wingley concept. My name is Willi Wesendorfer, European Cockpit Association. So thank you, Emmerich, for your enthusiastic presentation about Wingley. My general aviation heart really beats for the idea of Wingley, but unfortunately I'm a commercial airline pilot, and from this point of view the Wingley project looks a little bit different. The difference is, first of all, at the airline we have to prove that our transportation is safe before we take passengers on board. This is a very important fact. We have to invest a lot of money, we have to invest a lot of training, costs and effort with training manuals, safety standards, again training and air operator certificate, not only at airlines, also at corporate or business jet operators. They have to invest a lot before they can take the first passenger on board. That's not the case with Wingley. At Wingley, we have to be aware, Jean-Marc, you mentioned the statistic, 1,000 times less safe than airline transport in general aviation safety statistic is a warning signal. That means we, as European airline pilots, insist that it has to be made clear on the Wingley platform, however, that this is not under the safety standards of an airline transportation. This is air sports only, and we see it very critical if on the Wingley platform transportation from A to B is offered, because the normal passenger has no association to aviation. The normal passenger sees there is an offer, a transport from A to B, and it's cheaper than a commercial ticket. So the normal passenger doesn't ask why it's cheaper, he just takes the cheapest offered and has no background information about the increased safety risk. So the difference between the general aviation liability discussion and the commercial operation. In the commercial operation, we have to follow the principle of reversal of burden of proof. That means we have first to prove that we are safe, and then we can perform the transportation. So please make sure, EASA, that there is a clear distinction between commercial and air sport event of flying, but it's critical to offer transportation from A to B. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And I think that the distinction between commercial aviation and angel aviation is a clear element for us. And as I said, information to the public is key in this area. Emeric, you would like to comment as well on that?
Yeah, quickly. What you said as a conclusion is really interesting, is that it's made clear on the website that commercial aviation and light aviation, what we offer on Wingly, is two different sectors. And when I was saying in the presentation that the platform is for us a new way of communication, well, it's a way of communication we use to the passenger. The aim is that when the passenger is coming on the platform, some might know about light aviation, but some don't know about light aviation. And so it's made really clear on the platform. Well, I'll just finish and then let you talk. It's made really clear on the platform what are the difference between commercial aviation and light aviation. And if you go through the whole booking process when you request to join the flight, well, the last thing when you click on validate or request the flight, the seat, it's a pop-up with the four simple way to explain to a passenger that it's different. And the four simple things are that it's not a commercial plane, it's not a commercial transportation. The second point is that the airplanes used are different than the one used in commercial aviation, and the maintenance standards are different. Third point is on the pilot, saying that he doesn't have the commercial pilot license, he's just a private leisure pilot. And the fourth point is about cancellation, reminding the passenger that the flight can be cancelled at the last minute. So it's made really clear that what's offered on Wingly, it's not a viable means of transportation from A to B, but is really restricted to only leisure flights, day trips, one trips, or weekend trips.
And if I may add something, so this is what the platforms are doing. On our side at the agency, we are reviewing how to better inform the public on the actual level of safety of this activity. We have to do that in simple terms, and we'll do it in the coming month. One easy way to communicate to the public, for instance, would be to tell them, well, please be aware that when you use this kind of flight, the level of safety is comparable to riding a motorcycle. That's something that everyone can understand, and then before making the choice to fly a general aviation aircraft through Wingly or another platform, at least they know what's the intended level of safety. Let us take other questions. Yes.
I have a question as well, but first I really want to thank all the three panelists for this very impressive presentations. I really admire the enthusiasm, the brain behind all these new ideas. Congratulations. And just, I have a question. I have saved some money. Maybe I buy me a drone. How much? I just wonder, do I have saved enough? How much is it?
Do you currently have a GoPro camera?
Not yet, but there are movies where I'm on.
So Karma, with the camera included, with a Session 5 camera, which is a smaller version of the more affordable camera, is $1,000. And if you want the larger camera, it's $1,200.
Okay, thank you.
Good. And as we are talking money, a question to you, Emeric. Typically, what is the cost of a flight, for instance, a 1 hour flight, A to B? How much is it typically advertised on Wingly?
It always depends on the plane that's being used, because a Cessna 172 is not the same price as a Cirrus SR22. And so that's why we ask the pilot to tell what plane he's using, so we can check afterwards that the price that he's putting forward is normal for the plane he's using. But the average price today for 1 hour flight in a 4-seater plane is around €200, €250, depending on the country. It really depends. Between Switzerland and France, for example, there's a big gap. But it's around €200, meaning that it's around €50 per passenger per seat in the plane, including the pilot that also pays his share of the flight.
So It's 50 euro per
50
person.
euro,
Right,
yeah.
Okay, thank you. We take your question.
Okay, Dirk Polacek from Cockpit Association. I have a comment to Trish. You gave us the offer, you were reaching out for the Pilot Association to cooperate, and I would like to take that offer. I'm not buying your drone now, but maybe tomorrow. But I would like to take your offer on that, because that exactly goes in the right direction. We need a very broad information campaign. You have the name GoPro, all kids know it. The movie that you were presenting is going in exactly the right direction. With the European pilots, we were reaching out for the industry already. Unfortunately, the offer that we gave is not working correctly, I guess. Luckily, it's not a drone. Unfortunately, some parts of the industry have rejected that offer to cooperate on a broad informational campaign. We should do that. So I would like to take your offer. We need to exchange our business cards later on, and then we cooperate on this. This is a very important step going in the right direction. Congratulations. Thank you very much.
So let us take maybe the last question before lunch, if there is any.
Thank you very much. I'm part of the CA in Luxembourg, just for a quick presentation. We are more and more asking in our country how we deal with the drones and stuff like this. So my question, or open question, and just a remark. I was just thinking, with all drones, I just look, sorry for GoPro, but I just look for the Phantom 4 on the website. It's going at 6 kilometers height, so we are quite far from the 400 feet, or what was announced and what was blocked. Anyway, I just got a general remarks. It's linked to the EASA. Why not directly computing a database where the drone is allowed to take off or not? So you just do a complete map on the world, and you just allow the drone to make it work or not. It will solve maybe the question of the privacy, because everybody for the next Christmas may buy a drone for 1,000 euro to GoPro or whatever. So there will be some privacy question in the near future if everybody got a drone and want to look to his neighbor or whatever. I'm not entering in more detail on this, but also on the safety question, if you want to take off just near an airport, everybody knows the kind of issue we may encounter with engine broken and these kind of things. So maybe just creating a map of unknown area, or just a specific area, just to make it work for drones. So it's an open question for everybody. Thank you.
So we have a structure like that in the United States, that the Federal Aviation Administration puts out information that third-party software vendors will go ahead and compile. And drones like the DJI drone, as well as the GoPro drone, has these vendors that we plug and play into our software. The component of mapping the entire world, let's just bring it down to, let's talk about Europe. Who's going to pay for that? What type of data set is it going to be, and how are we going to be able to make sure that we can get that data set in real time to our drone operators? So it's absolutely what I think the world's going to look like in the future. Right now, that's really expensive. We're trying to figure out what the rules of the sky are, let alone the mapping structure behind it. But it is something that we have to tackle that at some point in time. I just don't know where it is on the priority list for EASA and others.
Yeah, I fully support that. It's not EASA that will provide the app or that will share the database. Our objective is to provide the standards, to come with the regulations on a high level, to ensure that this information is provided in a compatible way, in a uniform way across Europe, that service providers, that app developers can take it, provide it to the operators, or the operators can directly take it, or the manufacturers, or whoever is involved is playing a role in the game. And we have also in the prototype rules an article on service providers to ensure that this is done in a reasonable way, that the data is correct and supporting the safety of the operation. So we see our role more in endorsing the standards, pushing the industry toward these standardization, that it's easy for the operator to get the information.
Thank you, Stefan, and these will be the last words of this panel. Thank you to all the panelists for their presentations and the answers to the questions. And I think it's time for lunch now.
Yes,
Dominique?
thank you very much for this very lively discussion. I think, yes, we can... And thank you also to you, Stefan, for your previous panel and for contributing to this one. We'll break now for more networking, and we will be back at 1:45. The hotel has asked me to remind you that the checkout time is 12 o'clock. So those of you who have not yet checked out, I would advise to do it now. Thank you, and see you back at 1:45.